Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the WCG2013 StarcraftII World Finals. My name is Whiplash, and I will be solo casting this match between Jim and Suppy. So let's get right into it. In the bottom right, we of course have the Chinese player Jim. He is the first seed, and his opponent in the top left-hand position, hailing from America, is Evil Genius's Suppy, who recently went full-time in StarCraft II. This is, of course, a best of 3. We are still in the group stages. The top 2 from each group advance. And so far, so good for both of these players. Suppy, I got a chance to talk to him a little bit yesterday. He said he's feeling pretty good. He was recently in Taiwan. He's playing in the TESL. And he anticipates that he'll at least get a top 3 finish in that tournament. So it's looking like Jim wants to go for a gateway opener. Suppy, on the other hand, still has his options open, could move into the pool, also able to easily get that hatchery first, which is looking more and more likely as we see the drone count approaching 15. Jim's going to go ahead and scout across the map as well with a single probe. And from the looks of things, Suppy saving up the minerals, has the drone at the natural, and down goes the first hatchery for our Zerg player. Jim going to continue scouting around the map. He'll get the Suppy next, but he will see the lack of creep in the top right, which of course forces that probe to move around the map. When it comes to PvZ nowadays, Protoss, they have a lot of different options as far as openers go, thanks to the Mothership Core, which has been introduced in Heart of the Swarm, that just allows them to get a lot of extra defense out early on, which makes a lot of aggression in all ends from all races, really, a lot less effective against Protoss players in the early stages. Jim has a Zealot on the way. His core is about to finish, and he also has a good amount of gas in the early stages. He could use this to make a Mothership Core and get Warp Gate tech research, or he could play extremely greedy and get a Stargate, but as we can see, Mothership Core in production, and he's going to follow that up with a Nexus and the Warp Gate research, so not going to do anything that's extremely risky or all-in-ish, just going to move into that standard macro game. And Jim, of course, a pretty accomplished player in the Chinese scene. He's won a few tournaments. He's been in WCS as well. And, you know, he's still a pretty young player. He is 18 and already accomplished a lot to his name. One of the stronger Chinese players, most people would say. So between the two players, I would say it's a little bit hard to call who's going to win. Both of them have their strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, it could really go either way. There's not a clear favorite, I feel, when it comes to Jim versus Suppy. Looks like Jim grabbing all of his gases, at least at his main base, putting 3 on each. Going to build a sentry behind this. While Suppy just moves into getting, you know, another queen out, forcing more drones out, grabbing that third hatchery, while Jim builds 2 gateways and attempts to, well, get a nice little wall at that natural, but it's not link tight quite yet. He may need to build a pylon there, right but next to the gateways, if he wants that Zealot to really seal that hole towards the natural. Suppy's now finally taking his gases at the natural. We see Jim moving into the robotics tech, and this is interesting because a lot of Protoss players nowadays, they'll generally go for the Stargate tech. They'll get their Phoenix out. They'll do a little bit of scouting. With the Robotech, that generally means that they're going to get some Immortals out, and there's a huge timing for aggression that could come out. And look at this. Jim, I mean, he's almost showing his hand by building such an early and aggressive proxy pylon, which the Overlord immediately scouts, and Suppy instantly makes 14 Zerglings. He's getting the Roach Warren down as well, and Jim looks like he's going to pick off a single drone, and if Suppy's not careful, he may lose more workers following. Queen just doing a little bit of damage to this Mothership Core, and with the extra Queen for defense, that could help out, but these additional Zealots from the Proxy Pylon may actually end up doing a good amount of damage. Time Warp moves down. The Queen, will it get taken out? Yes, it does indeed fall to the Mothership Core, but the Zealots, they get surrounded by the Zerglings and will not live to fight another day. The Pylon as well, looks like it will eventually fall. So Jim overall did a little bit of harassment, but I feel like, yes, he did force out some units and he picked off a Queen. Not a huge advantage either way as far as the trade goes. Suppy was forced to build a lot of units, but he easily dispatched the Protoss army, and this is also going to allow him to really prepare himself for any type of timings that Jim may do. And chronoing out the second Immortal, it looks like we may see the parting style 1-1-1 Immortal all-in versus his Zerg opponents. All right, Jim adding on a few additional gateways, and doesn't look like he's really building too many more probes. And with the addition of all of these extra gateways onto his main forces, it is looking like he's going to move out. Yes, he has a lot of sentries, the Mothership Core, also the Pylon block off. This is a pretty telltale sign of what Jim is planning on doing. And the thing is, he's got a lot of sentries. He's going to be able to use a lot of force fields, and he's going to chrono out much more units, bringing the Warp Prism as well to help micro those Immortals. Suppy, though, he knows what's going on. He's focusing on getting a lot of Roaches out. He's getting some Zergling speed as well to help bolster those units, but it doesn't look like the Zergling speed will finish in time for this attack. Suppy needs as many units as possible to defend against this attack. And Jim, he's not building any probes, which means that he's really heavily committing on this attack, and this has to work for Jim. Otherwise, Suppy, I mean, he's going to clean the force up and pretty much be able to just overrun his opponent. All right, this is make it or break it for Jim. He needs to use his positioning to his advantage. He has to use perfect force fields, but Suppy, he already has a pretty decent concave, and here moves in Suppy. Where are the force fields? There they are, trapping a lot of the Roaches outside. And Suppy, what is he doing? He's not microing a lot of his units. He's just waiting. It looks like he's just going to essentially donate a good amount of units, and the force fields just absolutely cutting through this army. The Immortals getting free shots off, and I'm not sure if Suppy is really prepared for this. He's just kind of letting his Roaches get segmented off bit by bit, and Jim, he's losing almost no units to this. Suppy, he needs to get more units out to defend against this, but it looks like the force fields have just been a little bit too much for him, and Jim is going to move towards the natural, and additional Roaches come in.